In horror, if you've got a particular interest in something, there is a solid chance that said interest will come back to bite you on your backside in a major way. For instance, horror has shown that if you're a gamer, you're done for. If you're a film fan, you're done for. If you're a camping enthusiast, you are absolutely, unequivocally not making it out of your tent in one piece. And these are just a few choice hobbies that forever end in disaster. I'm Josh from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 horror movies that brutally punish hobbies. Number 10, Freddys Dead, The Final Nightmare, playing video games. When horror hounds talk about how Freddy Krueger became a parody of himself, the prime example forever offered up is 1991's Freddys Dead, The Final Nightmare. By the time of Freddys Dead, the shark had been jumped, the bloom was well and truly off the rose, and Robert Englund's Krueger was more about winking at the audience and serving up anything genuinely sinister. One thing that you can always rely on for the Elm Street franchise, though, is that every movie tends to deliver at least one or two unique kills. And for Freddys Dead, they don't get much more memorable than the demise of Breckin Mayer's Spencer Lewis. A stoner with a penchant for video games, Spencer's ultimate fate was bizarrely sealed in a video game. Sat on a sofa and high, Mayer's character hallucinates and gets sucked into a TV, where he finds himself in a video game where Freddy controls the villain, Spencer's disapproving father. So we get Spencer growing in size a la Mario before being confronted by a giant sprite of Krueger, with the real Freddy Krueger using a Nintendo Power Glove to kill the video game version of Spencer. In the real world though, Spencer is being moved around like a puppet and then thrown down a staircase to his death. Number 9. Fade to Black, being a cineast. There are plentiful movies out there that punish those who are major film fans, but few silver screen characters are quite as enamored by the magic of cinema as Eric Binford of 1980's Fade to Black. For Eric, his intense love of the movies not only has an unfortunate outcome for himself, but it's also bad news for several other people. You see, this character spends all of his time either in a movie theater watching pictures at home, or at his day job where he works at a film distribution warehouse. So passionate about this is Eric, he eventually winds up with a killing spree inspired by the likes of Dracula, The Mummy, Psycho, and Kiss of Death. While the extreme lengths he goes to for his hobby wind up with a bunch of dead bodies piling up, this intense love for film also results in Eric's own death. You see, in the finale, the troubled Eric Binford decides to reenact Cody Jarrett's death scene from 1949's White Heat up on the roof of the legendary Mann's Chinese Theatre on Hollywood. Shot by the police, he then falls to his death. Number 8. Don't hang up, prank calling. Unless you're Bart Simpson, it takes a special kind of kid to spend their days making prank calls, but hey, a hobby's a hobby, I guess. The movie Don't Hang Up opens as a bunch of high school kids become viral YouTube stars due to their habit of making prank phone calls. The video that caused the four of Brady, Sam, Jeff, and Roy to blow up saw them convince a frenzied Mrs. Colbine that there was an intruder in her house and that she and her daughter were in danger. On one such night of subsequent pranking though, Brady and Sam order pizzas to neighbors' houses and do some other lame crap. The tables are soon turned on the two though when the mysterious Mr. Lee begins to call them. By the time Don't Hang Up is over, Mr. Lee has murdered, or caused the death of, Roy, Jeff, Brady's parents, Sam's girlfriend Peyton, and Brady himself, with Greg Sulkin's Sam being framed for all of these killings. It's later explained how Mrs. Colbine dropped the phone before hearing that she'd been pranked, and accidentally shot and killed her daughter before then taking her own life. The implication then is that Mr. Lee is the husband and father of those two deceased souls. Number 7. Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, playing guitar. The Friday the 13th franchise is one brimming with throwaway characters, with any distinct characterization given to these figures likely only done so it can come back and bite them on the backside. In the case of Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan's JJ though, the one unique character trait given to her was that she was a budding rock star who was never seen without her trusty flying V guitar over her shoulder. Of course, Jason Takes Manhattan sees a group of graduating school kids taken on a class boat trip to New York. To make JJ more than just a nameless, faceless body for Jason to slice up, she's shown rocking out with her guitar and filming wannabe music videos while on the SS Lazarus. Deciding the absolute perfect place to jam out is the dark, dingy machine room at the depths of the Lazarus, JJ's hair-tastic guitar shredding is ruined by the arrival of one Jason Voorhees, with Jason then slaughtering her with her very own flying V. As the old saying goes, I guess, you live by the guitar, you die by the guitar. Number 6. Goal of the Dead, watching your football team. In the realm of horror, such a trip to your place of football worship can result in an extremely gnarly experience. For instance, Goal of the Dead is a movie that sees a cup game between two French teams end up in a brutal virus being spread throughout the entire town. As a lowly football side prepare to host a big money Olympique de Paris, the desperate manager injects one of his hard men with a formula designed to make him super aggressive in order to end the career of Paris player Sam Larry, who previously played for the local side before being drawn away by the glitz and glamour of the bigger team. This plan to take out Larry goes spectacularly wrong though, with the injected infected player becoming a violent zombie who spreads his condition to others by vomiting on them. Quicker than you can say the referee's a wanker, then the players on the pitch and the fans in the stands are either A, fighting off the infected, or B, becoming the infected themselves. Number 5. Final Destination 3, Tanning. For some people, maintaining a good tan is part of a regular routine. However, if those tanning enthusiasts happen to check out Final Destination 3, chances are that they may have reconsidered getting their bronze on again. Famously, the third Final Destination picture gave audiences one of the greatest death scenes in the history of the franchise. The first of the Devil's Flight roller coaster survivors to bite the bullet, Ashley and Ashlyn, end up burnt to a crisp when death comes calling for them during one of their usual trips to the tanning salon. With standard Final Destination shenanigans at play here, this pair of characters end up nice and crispy when their tanning beds malfunction, and we get an elaborate sequence involving a drink, the air conditioning, a coat rack, a potted tree, and a shelf for good measure. As a result of this wonderful coincidental turn of events, Ashley and Ashlyn are trapped in their overheating tanning pods with their safety goggles melting into their eyes before they're toasted up real good. Number 4. Fright Night. Being a fan of Fright Night. For 17-year-old Charlie Brewster, his main hobby is watching his weekly dose of the Fright Night TV show hosted by Peter Vincent, an actor who used to play a vampire hunter. Being a nerd of all things horror, it's Charlie's frequent watching of Fright Night that has him suspicious that his next-door neighbor Jerry might also be a real-life vampire. Of course, few people believe young Brewster, so his girlfriend Amy hires Vincent to prove that Jerry is absolutely not a vampire. But the problem is, Peter Vincent discovers that Jerry totally, utterly, completely, 100% is actually an undead ghoul. Consequently, by the close of Fright Night, Charlie has been put through the ringer, with his love of vampires very much coming back to bite him, pun very much intended by the way, as his best pal Evil Ed is turned into a vampire by Jerry, his girlfriend Amy likewise is corrupted by Jerry, and Charlie and Peter get into a fight for their lives. Even once Charlie had rumbled Jerry's existence as a vampire though, his obsession with these bloodsuckers got in the way of being able to have an easy life. Number 3. The Mutilator Hunting. Having been largely forgotten over the years, Buddy Cooper's The Mutilator has actually been featured on a couple of our horror lists in recent months. And once again here, it's tough to talk about hobbies that backfired without referencing the table-setting opening moments of this 1984 picture. See, as The Mutilator begins, it's soon apparent that Big Ed is quite the hunter. With it being Big Ed's birthday, we're shown a scene of young Ed Jr. polishing his old man's guns as part of his birthday celebrations. It's here that the Mutilator takes a turn though, as Ed Jr. ends up firing one of these guns, launching a bullet through a nearby wall and straight into the back of his mother. When Big Ed returns home at just the right time to find his wife, who had been making his birthday cake no less, dead on the floor, with Ed then spiraling into a rage of insanity that sees him try to get his beloved's corpse to take a shot of bourbon. Jumping ahead a few years, the Mutilator then has Big Ed stalking his now adult son and his college friends in order to seek revenge. Number 2. Eden Lake Camping. Oh, you foolish, foolish campers. When looking at the common tropes of horror, one thing that forever comes to mind is that any and all camping enthusiasts are likely to end up brutally offed in some heinous way. If thinking of camping, the Friday the 13th franchise, Camp Crystal Lake, and the ominous figure of Jason Voorhees may come to mind. But there are so many other films that opt to clinically kill off those who decide to venture out into the woods, the mountains, or wherever. To spotlight Eden Lake this time out, that grim 2008 picture is an extremely tough watch that ends in the death of a pair of lovebirds who enjoy hiking and camping. Said hiking and camping sees them pitch a tent, oi oi, at the side of the film's titular lake. Soon encountering a bunch of loud, brash and rude teenagers, Jenny and Steve end up becoming the victims of some absolutely horrendous actions from these youngsters. For Steve, he's stabbed, tied to a tree with barbed wire, has his teeth pulled out, and is tortured until horrifically killed. As for Kelly, Eden Lake ends with her winding up in the home of the parents of one of these troublesome teens, with the film's credits hitting as we hear her screams. Number 1. Breeder BDSM. In some ways, Breeder felt a little out of place when it was widely released earlier this year. Dripping with tropes and imagery of the torture porn craze of the mid-2000s, Breeder felt as if it had been released a good 15 years too late. Plot-wise, it has stern, no-nonsense Dr. Rubin kidnapping and experimenting on young women as part of her plan to reverse the aging process. See, Rubin is 61 yet looks 40 and is utterly ruthless in her quest to defy nature. Elsewhere we have Mia, a troubled wife in a strained marriage who has sexual needs and wants that veer towards pain and bondage. Unfortunately for Mia though, she's unable to get her kink on due to her husband being a bit of a bore. Oh, and he's also secretly in cahoots with Dr. Rubin as well. Of course, Mia herself ends up in the clutches of Rubin, and here her pain and bondage wishes are all granted tenfold as she's tortured and brutalized in some pretty darn rough ways. So while Mia had been craving a more spicy, rough, extreme sex life, things are taken a little too extreme once Breeder properly gets going.